It's been about 25 years since I played my first Zelda game. Throughout all that time, there have been so many incredible, fun, puzzling, or downright silly moments that have made me love this series of games more than any other for most of my life. Over the years, I tended to go back and forth on what I considered my favorite series of all time, among them being Sonic, the Xeno series, Drakengard Nier, The Elder Scrolls, and more recently, The Legend of Heroes. But Zelda always comes back and takes the crown when everything else stumbles. All I have to do is plop in pretty much any old Zelda game and relive the magic this series has to offer. This video is for the sake of capturing the best moments in the best way I can. My top 10 favorite moments of The Legend of Zelda. Now, what qualifies as a moment in this video? If you've watched my previous top 10 best moments in the Trail series video, it will pretty much follow the same format. Any period of time in-game, whether it be a short cutscene, a compelling part of the main story, an interesting side quest, an epic boss fight, an entire dungeon, or even an entire region of the game. Pretty much anything is on the table. Most importantly, these moments are ranked based on how much fun they were to play, how much they contributed to making the story exciting or interesting, and of course, how much they impacted me and made me love the series. I will only be including canon games.
Good!
And only the ones I have played, which is most of them. Zelda 1, Zelda 2, Four Swords, and Triforce Heroes are the only ones I will not be talking about since I haven't beaten them. The only other limitation I have in place is that I will only have one moment per game, just to spice things up a bit. But I'll even include a big list of honorable mentions before number 1. And I may have a surprise at the end, so make sure to watch it all the way through. Oh, and obviously, spoiler warning for almost every game. I will give a warning for major spoilers when necessary. With all that out of the way, let's get into it. It's kinda difficult to pick favorite moments from some of the 2D games. The way I have the definition of a moment defined, there should be a really pivotal or engaging story moment that goes along with making the gameplay awesome. And the 2D games tend to be fairly light on the story, and have you focus on just having fun with the game instead. Despite that, I was able to come up with 3 for this list, the first one being from Oracle of Ages. This game in particular cranked the puzzle factor up to 11, and was probably the most confusing 2D Zelda game to get through. They also required you to use a bit of smart thinking to defeat some of the bosses, including the main antagonist, Varan. Varan tricks Link into helping her by possessing Impa, takes over the body of the sage Nayru at the beginning of the game, goes back in time and causes some pretty diabolical destruction and suffering we get to witness on screen for a Zelda game. The monkeys, man. Even the monkeys are gone. A while later, Link is tricked into helping Varan again by giving mystery seeds to Queen Ambi under the direction of Varan in Nayru's body. I never realized this until recently, but this was some very clever foreshadowing to the obtuse way you're supposed to fight her. About halfway through the game, you get to confront Varan directly in a short boss battle to force her out of Nayru's body by using mystery seeds and the switch hook. However, it turned out to be a short-lived victory, as Varan possesses the body of Queen Ambi instead, which allowed her to force the continuation of building the Black Tower. Once the Black Tower is completed, it's up to Link to ascend with all the essences of time to take Varan down in a very fun, tricky boss fight. Varan's movements throughout the story along with her boss fights are easily the biggest highlight of both Oracle games for me, so that's why I have it here at number 10. I gotta admit, I was really not much of a fan of Breath of the Wild's canon at all. Every time I found another one of those memories to learn about the past, it was just not interesting in the slightest. What I liked about the older game's lore dumps more was the fact they were spent learning more about the world of Hyrule, the divine machinations, the sacred realm, and the Triforce and all that. But this time, it was more about the disappointingly shallow relationship between Link, Zelda, and all the other champions. I just wasn't all that interested. In Tears of the Kingdom, however, things took a bit more of a serious and interesting turn, where we learned about Ganondorf's history, the Zonai, and what the hell was going on with all this new stuff in Hyrule that seemingly popped out of nowhere. But one of these memories specifically stuck out to me, and that was the one where they showed us just what happened right when Ganondorf came into his power as the King of Evil. He assassinates then Queen Sonia and steals her secret stone of time, corrupting it into his own. This was probably the most dramatic death sequence I've ever seen in a Nintendo game, but okay, come on now. You know the real reason why I've included this as one of the best moments.
Queen Sonia! No.
I don't know if I should consider this as one of those so bad it's good moments. Maybe I should. This was supposed to be a serious and terrifying moment, and if someone described it that way, I'd believe them.
Okay, I believe you.
But me, I could not help but laugh my ass off when this corny-ass grin appeared on Ganondorf's face. Oh my god. That alone is a worthy contender for one of the best moments, is it not?
No survivors!
Minish Cap is honestly pretty far away from my favorite Zelda games, but I can't deny that the Palace of Winds is one of the best dungeons in 2D Zelda history. Probably the best, to be honest. Not even for any story-related reasons either. This place is just so damn fun.
The game is fun. If it's not fun, why bother?
And that's pretty much all you need to know. Fantastic level design featuring a complex tower surrounded by extra platforms and rooms scattered across the clouds. A fun gimmick using the rock's cape to jump and fly over long distances. And an intense acrophobia-inducing boss fight using the cape to jump between two massive manta ray-like flying monsters and jumping over their attacks, and using the Force Sword to hit all of the larger one's eyes at once before the other one flies in and sweeps you off, then hitting the eyes of the smaller one in the meantime. I wish they had taken notes from this dungeon for future games, but there really hasn't been a 2D dungeon anywhere near as good as this one, at least in my opinion. Maybe Echoes of Wisdom will change that.
Hey, I doubt it!
I've been noticing an increase of people claiming Wind Waker as their favorite Zelda game of all time in recent years, so if you're one of them, prepare yourself. Of all the 7 3D Zelda games so far, it's ranked number 6 for me. Back when it first came out, I was one of those edgy boys that was heavily disappointed in the sudden change of art direction and world building, hoping for more of a follow-up to what we got on the N64. We eventually got that. Sort of, in 2006, so I couldn't stay salty about it for too long, right? Well, playing Wind Waker again on the Wii U in like 2014 showed me that I still can't hold this game in too high regard because while I do like it overall, there's too many little things I don't like about it. But there's 2 moments in this game that I always look forward to. One of which being the Earth Temple, which would have made the list if the whole dungeon didn't climax in the worst way possible with one of the most disappointing bosses in the entire series. On the other hand, we have my other favorite dungeon in the game, the Tower of the Gods. Unoceaning this tower is probably one of the coolest spectacles in the game. Using the 3 goddess pearls to shine a golden triangle across the sea, causing it to rise from the ocean high into the sky. The interior is also pretty awesome, with many different puzzle elements that keeps the dungeon interesting throughout the entire thing. The boss is easy, but pretty cool and fitting. The real reward is how you get sent down to below the sea afterwards, and you get to see just what happened to Hyrule in an unsettling visit to Hyrule Castle frozen in time. And then you get to pull the Master Sword in a room that pays homage to the 7 sages from Ocarina of Time, only to learn later on that you have just broken the seal on Ganondorf's power as well. Wind Waker definitely has a slow start, but this is where the game really started to pull me in and made me rethink my disappointment, which is why it belongs in the number 7 spot. I I do not like Skyward Sword very much, and not for the reasons you may be expecting, but I can get into that another time. If there's one thing about Skyward Sword that I can say was executed better than anything else in the game, it's the character of Demon Lord Girahim. Yeah, if you know me or have seen my previous content referencing this series, you shouldn't be surprised that he would be on here somewhere. This guy is an absolute show stealer. Every single time he appears in-game is a worthy contender for this list. The way he's incredibly sinister, intimidating, cocky, and even emotionally unstable makes him an unpredictable and scary antagonist. But what also makes him interesting is that his progress throughout the game is arguably fairly even with your own, with Link's. He and Link are competing on relatively equal footing for the same goal, finding Princess Zelda first, which is a unique role for a main antagonist to have in the series. And he gets pissed when he cannot succeed. In addition, his 3 boss fights are also some of the best in the game, mostly the first and final one though. His first fight is a great introduction to him as a boss and as a way to make you think outside the box when using the game's motion control mechanics. The final fight is just plain epic and a lot of fun, though when you beat him, he still gets the last laugh as he completes his goal and becomes the Sword of the Demon King, who we may talk about another time. Oh yeah, let's not forget about his greatest and most memorable asset. For this entry, I'm going to cheat a little bit because it's something that happens in many Zelda games, and I want to highlight them all anyway. Okay, most of them at least. It's always a key moment in various Zelda games where things tend to take a drastic turn and make the game interesting. And that is the moment you obtained the Master Sword. Always a pivotal moment in the story of whatever game it occurs in. Even has a few variations in the form of Link obtaining the 4-sword in Minish Cap and the 4 Swords games, as well as the Phantom Sword and Locomo Sword in the DS games. Bootleg Master Sword moments, if you will. The Master Sword made its glorious debut in A Link to the Past, where you pull it after obtaining the 3 Pendants of Virtue. Doing so allows you to enter the Dark World without being transformed by magic, unlocking an entire new map that doubles the game's content. Back in the day, that was probably a major moment for those who first played the game. For me, however, it was when I first pulled the Master Sword in Ocarina of Time. Pulling the sword being sent forward in time after your actions led Ganondorf to the Triforce by accident, emerging as an adult instead of a child, only to see Hyrule Castle Town in ruins. It was quite the change. Although, back then, this whole moment was spoiled by the damn instruction manual, so it didn't hit as well as it could have. You know, I'm starting to notice this trend more and more these days, and it's starting to annoy me. Now that I look back at A Link to the Past manual, they kinda did the same thing with the Dark World. Why would you do that? Anyway, Oracle of Seasons and Ages also had the Master Sword, but it's an optional item that's not really important in those games. We don't need to talk about that. Wind Waker had an interesting way to present the Master Sword, which we talked about previously. Going down beneath the sea into the frozen Hyrule, seeing the chamber with stained glass renditions of the 7 sages from Ocarina of Time, only to realize pulling the sword also broke the seal on Ganondorf's power. Twilight Princess, right after Link and Midna become doomed by Xanth's evil magic, you then have to find the Master Sword to break the curse on yourself. Now you can explore Hyrule freely and use Midna's powers to travel anywhere you want, and become a furry whenever you want. Skyward Sword, where you actually get to create the Master Sword as part of the story, refining the Goddess Sword with the help of the 3 dragons. A Link Between Worlds, where... Damn, what happened in this game again? I can't remember any of it. Oh yeah, the Master Sword has a similar role to its predecessor, and allows you to break a dark barrier and enter Lorule for the first time. Breath of the Wild, where... Actually, this is probably one of the least eventful and least rewarding out of these. It's very optional and outside of boss battles is only useful for a period of time. But at least in Tears of the Kingdom there is a lot more weight behind retrieving the Master Sword, even if it's completely non-essential. Oh yeah, even Hyrule Warriors has a pretty decent moment, but we won't talk about that for now. Nintendo did a great job making the Master Sword so much more than just an attack power upgrade. Each time you acquire it, except in the Oracle games, It always marks a turning point in the story that also opens up the game to new, interesting content that you may or may not have been expecting. If I had to pick a favorite though, it's probably still Ocarina of Time despite the spoils. One thing I always remember fondly about Ocarina of Time was how they did all the shiny light and magical effects, and after you pull the Master Sword it takes you to the Temple of Light, which is pretty much made entirely of these effects, which was incredible looking for an N64 game. Although younger me was annoyed by this moment due to all the dialogue, I now definitely appreciate it as one of the better moments in the series that builds the lore of Hyrule in a way that is very compelling. Especially later on, when it was explained how this moment in particular was the moment that defined the overall direction and lore of the series. Major spoiler warning for Link's Awakening. What if instead of fighting to save the world, you are fighting to make the world disappear? Some may consider this the hottest take of the entire list, but I think Link's Awakening has one of the most compelling stories in the series, and that may be entirely an accident. I don't know for sure. It's a very bizarre and whimsical game on the surface, more so than any other Zelda game at the time, with random Easter eggs from other Nintendo series scattered throughout the game, a very silly cast of characters with tons of talking animals, and is just an all-around joyful experience. Until you get about halfway through the game, where the dungeons shift from fairly normal to having terrifying themes that can be interpreted as nightmare-inspired, as well as one diversion to some small ruins that shows you the truth of Koholint Island. If you continue to collect the instruments and awaken the windfish, everything you experienced in this game will be gone, as if it never happened. Normally, when I think of an "it was just a dream" story, I tend to think of silly stories or cartoons for children that are inconsequential and throwaway, kind of like our version of Super Mario Bros. 2, just saying. But this is different. You are trapped in the dream of the Windfish, a powerful deity whose continued nightmare-induced slumber could have grave ramifications on the real world. On the other hand, Koholint is a very nice place. You may have had a lot of fun exploring and interacting with the world. You may have grown fond of Marin, who is probably Link's ideal match. Or maybe your ideal match, and maybe Marin was your first waifu you ever had, not that I'm speaking from experience or anything. Baka. You may not want all of this to go away. So, do you press on? Well, it's a game, so of course you do. By the time you collect all 8 instruments, maybe that little revelation from the ruins comes back to you as you play them. If not, don't worry, that annoying owl will remind you. But you continue anyway, and face your nightmares. A shadowy boss that morphs into many bosses from A Link to the Past, including Ganon himself. After you beat the final form, then you must approach the Windfish, play all the instruments one more time, and then watch as everything you know from this game just fades away as the magical melancholy Ballad of the Windfish plays. Yeah, it's not quite the happy ending you'd expect from a Zelda game. Even to this day, after so many more games, there hasn't really been one to compare to it. But you may be wondering a few things as you watch this. 1. Why isn't it higher on the list after such a long, heartfelt explanation of such a simple game? Well, the fact that I have to over-theorize or imagine about what's going on is part of the problem. They tried to keep everything brief and simple when trying to get it onto the Game Boy's limited hardware and graphics, but that also kind of worked in the game's favor in my opinion. It's a lot harder to imagine things as they could be, in your own way, when everything is detailed and shoves everything into your face. Which leads into 2. Why am I only using the original game in this video rather than the Switch remake? Because the Switch remake sucks. I hate it. Get that shit out of here. I made a video on that. It's old and not very good, but I still agree with a lot of it. Also 3. There are a few simple things that could have made this ending more impactful. The biggest one is a simple one. Make the player summon each of the instruments manually by pressing a button rather than just happening automatically. Give more agency to the player by making themselves erase Koholint Island and everyone that lives there. Anything else would require expanding the dialogue and story, so let's just move on. As much as I love Majora's Mask, even I will admit there are quite a few areas in the game that are pretty mid, or worse. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people actually dropped the game because it took too long to get interesting. But one thing that's pretty undeniable is that if you choose to stick with a game, explore as much as you can, and see it through to the end, it really, really rewards you. Case in point, Ikana Canyon and Stone Tower. I've played through this game multiple times, and I always look forward to visiting this place again and again and again. The world of Termina has a creepy, unnerving atmosphere pretty much anywhere you go. Each of the 4 main regions have this dour and melancholy theme prior to completing the dungeon, but Ikana takes it to the next level, being a full-on wasteland with only creepy undead inhabitants that will mess you up if you're not prepared. Though, to be fair, the early segments of this region are kind of tedious, especially the Gibdo Well. But once you're through it, you get to take over Ikana Castle and fight one of the best and most difficult bosses in the game, Egos du Ikana, and his 2 Stalfos minions. And once you defeat him, you get the creepypasta-inspiring Elegy of Emptiness to take on Stone Tower. This place is very interesting for various reasons, and to be fair, a lot of people do complain about this part, having to spam the Elegy of Emptiness song over and over to get through it. Hey, if you play it smart, it's only like 9 times. But once you do complete it, you unlock the best dungeon in the game, Stone Tower Temple. A long, ungodly, bizarro dungeon that tests your abilities from damn near every other part of the game. This place is so incredibly well designed in so many ways, especially considering the generation it released when 3D games were still in a very experimental phase. Halfway through the dungeon, you fight the Garo Master, which is a great mid-boss that will test your combat skills, and unlock the Light Arrow, which can flip the entire dungeon upside down. Or rather, flip the world upside down, where the sky is below you, and go through the entire dungeon again for the second half. The boss fight at the end of the dungeon is just okay, but also kinda cool being able to use the Giant's Mask. Just pretend the 3DS version doesn't exist. This place is so uniquely and intricately designed that it deserves to be called the best dungeon in the entire series, in my opinion. I am totally not biased or anything. It even inspired all sorts of wild fan theories, such as being inspired by the Tower of Babel and that the temple was built as a rejection of the gods of Hyrule, which might explain its outward appearance. It's too bad we'll probably never learn more about it. One thing the Zelda series has been very good at for a long time is the grand finale. So yeah, this entry will have major spoilers for Twilight Princess. I could include everything, from the entire Palace of Twilight dungeon to the showdown with Zant all the way to the final second of the credits sequence, but let's just focus on the finale. The fight with Zant is great, but pretty disappointingly easy in my opinion. Well, to be fair, a lot of the game was disappointingly easy. Keep that in mind for later. But it makes up for that in atmosphere, awesome set pieces, and probably some of my favorite characters in the entire series. Notably, the portrayal of Ganondorf was very interesting, and even though he admittedly looked kinda strange, like a lot of characters do in this game, his design reflects his dark personality very well, and has an undeniable intimidation factor to it. And seeing what he's capable of makes the build-up to his showdown all the more palpable. But before that, I have to give special mention to Hyrule Castle. Not only is it the coolest castle design in the series by far, when you get there, it's eerie and depressing, as if it's been reduced to a haunted death chamber, with the silence only broken by Link himself and all the powerful monsters inside. I love this final dungeon a lot for various reasons. Once you get to the top, That's where the real fun begins. Ganondorf has a 4-phase fight that will take you quite a while to get through. First, he takes over Zelda's body and uses her against you in a battle reminiscent of Ocarina of Time. Sword tennis, let's go, boys! After that, he is purged from Zelda's body and goes berserk, turning into the beast form of Ganon that you have to take down as Wolf Link with the help of Midna. This fight is alright, I guess. Too much waiting around for my taste. Afterwards, Midna uses her powers at max force to try and take out Ganondorf herself, but she fails. It's up to Link and Zelda to finish the fight, first on horseback, which is an epic spectacle battle, unless you can't get control of the game's camera. Then you fight him one-on-one for the final phase. Using all of the combat prowess you've gained throughout the game, you have to try and find an opening in Ganondorf's rock-solid defense. Or you can just use the fishing rod, I guess.
The game is fun.
But yeah, it's an awesome climax, and I loved it a lot. After this, killing Ganondorf for good breaks the curse on Midna, who survived after all, and reveals to us her true form. The ending is very satisfying, giving you the longest song in the entire series to date, I think, as the credits roll and you get to see the ending to your journey play out, and the ending to the stories of all the other major characters you've met throughout the game, including Midna, who interrupts the credits to say goodbye to us in a very dramatic fashion. So what's stopping this incredible moment from being number one? Well, remember when I mentioned that this game is disappointingly easy? Yeah, that applies to the finale as well. The part that typically gives me the most trouble is the horseback segment due to the wonky horseback controls and camera, and if you get knocked off the horse once, you are put in a very disadvantageous position where you can get combo locked easily. The final one-on-one showdown, on the other hand, if you get hit, you lose half a heart. That's it. Keep in mind that by the time you get to this point, you'll likely have up to 20 hearts, and the more you have, the more of a cakewalk every phase of the finale is. I can't stress enough how ridiculous this is because I have never died on any phase of the finale, ever. Even on my first playthrough back in 2006, even on both of my 3 heart runs, like, come on Nintendo. Ah well, it was the Wii era after all. The massive spectacle, the atmosphere, and all the epicness, including the music, makes up for it in my eyes. Although, there were times where I felt like it was trying a bit too hard to one-up a previous game's ending. Oh, oops. Did I just give it away? Before we get to number 1, here are quite a lot of honorable mentions. I tried to pick at least one from each game. Turning into a rabbit from A Link to the Past. Just look at the little guy, I mean, come on. The Face Shrine in Link's Awakening. After learning about the truth of Koholint Island, how about some more second thoughts when you enter a creepy dungeon with faces in the floor? Nice. The aftermath of the Deku Tree from Ocarina of Time. You learn about the creation of the world, get a nice shiny, watch the Deku Tree die, get accused of murder, then awkwardly run away from your girlfriend after she gives you a mouth instrument. That's a lot to take in, isn't it? Meeting Zelda in Ocarina of Time. Only because I find it funny to tell her no. The Spirit Temple in Ocarina of Time, my favorite dungeon in the game. I do love fantasy desert themes like that. Watching the moon fall in Majora's Mask, probably the most epic game over scene in any video game ever, maybe. The moon and ending of Majora's Mask, a fever dream of a final boss fight with a satisfying end to a bizarre story. Anju and Cathay's questline from Majora's Mask, reunite true love with 2 minutes left until everyone dies. The aliens at the ranch in Majora's Mask, the game was creepy enough already and now there's alien abduction as well. The Tarm Ruins area of Oracle of Seasons, some surprisingly nice music in this zone with a very fun dungeon. The showdown with Onox in Oracle of Seasons, one of the hardest 2D Zelda bosses I've fought from what I remember. The Ancient Tomb and Oracle of Ages, long, challenging, and possibly the most intricate puzzle dungeon in the 2D Zelda games. The battle with Twin Rova in the Oracle games, this fight is way more fun than the Ganon fight that follows it. That part of Star Fox Adventures where... wait, what series are we talking about again? The Earth Temple from Wind Waker, like I mentioned earlier, my favorite dungeon, but with probably the worst boss in the game. But I like the dungeon, and throwing Medley at walls. That's fun too. The final bosses and ending of Wind Waker. Puppet Ganon is a chaotic fight followed by a decent Ganondorf fight with a final blow that goes way harder than you expect from that game. Four Swords Adventures, I can't decide on this one. Maybe I'll play it again one day. The final battle of Minish Cap. Vati is a great final boss while also being an adorable little bundle of edge. The Bridge of Eldin duel in Twilight Princess. Yeah, gotta save your boy from the goblins in the most rash and badass way possible. The Interloper scene from Twilight Princess. Yeah, that one. One of the most unintentionally funny moments in the game in my opinion. Gets a so bad it's good mention. The Caravan Escort mission from Twilight Princess. Oh, I just love escort missions. I mean, if they're like this one, it would be nice if there was more than just a single one in the entire game. The entire Desert and Arbiter's Ground segment from Twilight Princess. My favorite dungeon in the game, and you know me and desert themes, just saying. Also, the boss is so good! The Wild West style Hidden Village shootout from Twilight Princess. Yeah, it's not hard at all or anything, but it was an unexpected twist. The Temple of the Ocean King from Phantom Hourglass. You may be thinking, what? But yeah, I didn't hate this place. The final run of it, that is, where you can bypass a lot of stuff with your new abilities. I thought it was a pretty cool idea, at least. Oh yeah, the Ghost Ship dungeon's pretty cool too. The Tower of Spirits in Spirit Tracks, one of the only places in the game that actually offered a bit of challenge. I always looked forward to the later parts of the dungeon. Groose from Skyward Sword, a character who is so bad he's good, I guess. Any moment with him was pretty hilarious, or cringe, or both. The Ancient Cistern from Skyward Sword, probably the best dungeon in the game with a very interesting inspiration. I like the sand ship too, though. Desert themes! Fi's Farewell in Skyward Sword. Not to spoil it too much, but this one scene along with the music almost made me not hate her. Almost. The Ice Ruins from A Link Between Worlds, probably the most challenging dungeon in the game, at least from what I can remember. Playing as Ganondorf in the main story of Hyrule Warrior. Oh wait, we're not including that. Storming Hyrule Castle in Breath of the Wild. The best music in the game plays as you march through tough, powerful enemies to finally face off with Calamity Ganon. The Wind Temple in Tears of the Kingdom. Probably the most well-designed dungeon in the game with the best music in the game, the best boss music in the game, and probably the coolest looking boss design I've ever seen. Too bad it's pathetically easy. The battle with Ganondorf in Tears of the Kingdom. I loved how this fight really tries to mess with you by taking away your hearts and disrupting your flurry rushes. And lastly, that moment when you find the room with the most pots to break or the most grass to mow in any Zelda game. It will never not be satisfying. On to number 1. I know. I kinda already spoiled what number 1 is, but hey, it's also a very easy choice that probably tops many other Zelda fans' favorite moments as well, and for good reason. Major spoiler warning for Ocarina of Time. What can I say about this entire final segment of Ocarina of Time that hasn't already been said? I'm very late to the party after all. Well, let's start with the Ganon's Castle dungeon. I thought this was a clever way of finding an excuse to make you use pretty much everything you've acquired up to this point in the game, including a few things that haven't been used at all previously, while showing off more of the game's shiny, colorful light effects that I love ever so much. Screw the fire one though. But once you complete all 6, it's time to ascend Ganon's Tower. The game throws one last gauntlet of tough enemies at you, including 2 Dino Foals, which never appeared anywhere but here and the optional Gerudo Training Ground, 2 Stalfos, and 2 Iron Knuckles, which are probably the strongest enemies in the game. But if you come prepared like I usually do, you'll make quick work of all of them. Fighting Ganondorf is an interesting experience, as Navi will not be able to Z-target at all, so you have to manage without her help. And once again, it's sword tennis time, boys, let's go! After a few sets of that, Ganondorf will try to take you down with him by destroying his castle, so you and Zelda have to escape together by helping each other get to the exit in time, which includes an inconveniently placed Stalfos duo that will revive themselves if you don't kill them both quickly. Dick move, isn't it? Once you get out, you get to watch the glorious sight of Ganon's tower collapsing in on itself, only to be interrupted by Ganondorf, still alive because of the Triforce of Power, and he's pissed. In his berserk rage, he summons all his power to transform into the powerful Ganon and knocks the Master Sword out of Link's hand. This final phase went so far above and beyond anything we had seen in video games at the time, with such an incredible atmosphere, on-point lighting effects, amazing music. Everything just worked so damn well for this fight. Consider the time it came out too. 3D games were still in a very primitive state compared to today. And yet, its presentation still holds up to this day in my opinion. Not only that, this fight was very cleverly designed as well, with various ways to take him down. The main one being using a light arrow to the face, which stuns him the most. But you can also use normal arrows or the hookshot to distract him briefly. Or you can ignore all that and do the most risky maneuver of just rolling underneath his legs to where his weak spot is, his tail. And there's multiple ways to damage him there too, whether it's the Megaton Hammer, the Bigoron Sword, or even Deku Nuts. Yeah, those things that you may not have used all game. Oh, and try not to get hit, because unlike the finale of Twilight Princess, Ganon will take 5 hearts if he hits you with his swords. Ouch. I remember dying a lot when I got here for the first time when I was young. Once you get the Master Sword back, you have to use it against him or else he will not go down. Then, Zelda will use her magic to give you the opportunity to land the final blow in a brutal, satisfying kill shot. Zelda and the Seven Sages then use some more fancy light magic to seal Ganondorf away, with him foreshadowing the future of the series for years to come. The ending plays out in a very satisfying but also forlorn way, as Zelda has to reluctantly send Link back in time for good, so that he may make up for the time that was taken from him being trapped in the Temple of Light for 7 years. Then we get our credit sequence, a nice little montage of all the locations we visited throughout the game, followed by a party hosted by the ranch with everyone from all over the world celebrating the new era of peace. We get one last look at the sages before we see a scene of Navi parting with Link in the Temple of Time, then Link meeting up with Zelda one more time before the game is truly over. Later on, it was revealed that Link met with Zelda to tell of his experience in the future, help expose the evil deeds of Ganondorf leading to his imprisonment, and eventually, execution. Or at least, an attempt at one. I love everything about this entire grand finale of Ocarina of Time. It truly was one of, if not the greatest spectacles in gaming at the time it came out, and still, in my eyes, remains as one of the greatest endings in video game history. And before you say it in the comments, yes, I am biased. 100% completely biased. But like I said with number 3, just forget the 3DS version exists. Yeah, I know. I haven't played it myself, and everyone says it's a great remake, but from everything I've seen, it just looks so wrong. The lighting in particular is just way off in every location where lighting is paramount to building the atmosphere of wherever you are. The characters all look weird. At least to me, but that's more subjective, I guess. Playing it on a tiny screen also doesn't help. It was designed to be played on a TV. Maybe, just maybe, the Wii U would have sold better if this remake was made for that instead. But I digress. Ocarina of Time's finale will live rent-free in my head forever. And that wraps up my top 10 favorite Zelda moments. If you're familiar with my content, you probably know what's coming next. Yeah, remember when I said I had a surprise at the end? It's not really a surprise. The next top 10 will be my top 10 worst moments in the Zelda series. Coming eventually. Time to farm some more salt. I love it. My top 10 worst Trails moments video farmed a lot of it after all, and I enjoy it quite a bit. Just saying. Also, I intentionally made this video before Echoes of Wisdom came out, so expect to see me stream that in the near future. Hero mode, 3 hearts, lots of suffering. I honestly don't expect anything from that game to break into my top 10 favorite moments. If it does, well, when I do the worst moments video, I'll eat some crow, I guess. Otherwise, I'll give it an honorable mention. Anyway, leave a comment on what your top 10 or however many Zelda moments are. I look forward to seeing all the interesting choices you guys may have. Leave a like if you enjoyed my ramblings. Subscribe for more legendary content like this. And check out my other videos like my What I Would Do If I Could Make a Sequel to Hyrule Warriors. You know, the good one. Not that one. Ew. Or check out my other top 10s like my favorite soundtracks or favorite and least favorite JRPG protagonists and antagonists. I also do a gaming news series once a month called RNG if you want to keep up with only the important things in an untimely fashion and learn about new games that come out. Drop by my Discord to say, hey, listen.
Look here! Look, listen!
Catch my videos on Rumble or Odyssey, or follow me on the X Twatter if you want to peer into the void. Now, come on, Echoes of Wisdom. My expectations for you are the lowest, so please, exceed them.